Okay, good morning on the whatever coast. Good afternoon on the other coast. And it's it's a beautiful day here in Peru. Sun is out, it's hot, a little steamy, and just enjoying, all that arises with this kind of heat. You know. And it kind of fits with the topic of control today because we being in control, having control, not having control, kind of brings this uncomfortable, hot feeling inside. And at least for me, it does. One of the reasons why I picked this topic this week was because I felt like not only is it something that is in the air, so to speak, but it's in me right now. And for me, first day on my period, and usually those days leading up, I start feeling everything a little tight. And that first day of the period, like, okay, there's all sorts of contrast, as Abraham Hicks says. And I don't know if you guys follow Abraham Hicks, but I do and have for years, law of attraction. And so I brought on this kind of topic of control. And this is something that for me, I have dealt with during times of my life. Let's say possibly from a childhood of a lot of movement and scatteredness. Thank you. This is Beautiful Chorus, and they have a beautiful album of just songs for the chakras. This one's the third eye chakra song. Beautiful. So this need to control for me tends to be a little bit of a theme for me, and I notice when I'm feeling, oof, I need to control. I'm like, okay, what part of me is elevated right now, and where does this need to control? Where is it actually coming from? And because in reality, it's an illusion of control. Um, we feel like if I can control this happening right here, then I will feel better. And there is no control really of this happening over here. There are certain things that we might be able to manage in our lives, our homes, how clean or how messy they are. Um, but when it comes to um, like this morning, I had just gotten up out of bed. I opened my front door just so I could get that nice breeze coming in. And I hadn't even had my coffee yet, and already somebody was banging on my gate outside, yelling, "Hola, hola." And for me, it was like, brought up this part of me that's like, the unknown is at my door. I must go and control it. So, and these things are all super heightened right now because I am kind of around my cycle, and this is an energetically open time of the month for me. as is for most women, a little bit more sensitive, a little bit more heightened, a little bit more, I don't know, I was kind of reflecting on it today and I was like, why is this part elevated right now? And it's because of the sensitivity or the more sensitivity that I feel. And so this part kind of comes up and goes, I gotta protect this girl. So anyhow, um, but then so back to this topic. Um, why do we try to control? And if you just ask yourself this question, you know, and what kinds of things do we control? I mean, there are lots of different levels, There's, controlling your surroundings. Like I said, the cleaning or is it messy? This is all kind of like you're maintaining to have some sort of an emotional reward or response. To like outcomes in business, trying to control the outcomes. And, we can really only fantasize, in a sense, what could be the possible outcome. But when it comes to business, also, it's tapping into our sense of security and safety. Because if our business is successful, then we will be able to pay our bills and survive. And then there's this feeling that comes on after you have an experience like being completely out of control of the situation. For me, it was when my house burned down up in Northern California. That was like complete, there was nothing to do. We could not stop it. There was no getting up there and fighting it. There was no controlling this fire. There was nothing that I could do. And so this feeling of being so out of control really kind of pushed the accelerator on this part of me that needs to control. And I know some of you here that follow me have dealt with the recent fires. And so that might be coming up for you, especially like once you have some time um, separate from the event. Like there's the initial happening, and then there are the months later when you start to see, oh wow, this is a new reaction, or this is a new response to a situation that normally wouldn't affect me so much, or maybe it would just be a fleeting, oh, that's weird, I feel that. But then it's like, oof, it just takes you over, completely blends with you, as they say in some modalities. So, what is this, I guess, control, this part of you that is trying to, it's really protecting something and managing something. And so, in kind of this modality that I follow when I'm doing tapping as well, is this parts work and this internal family system. And if you're new to internal family systems, I can send you a link. But basically, it talks about there's a self, a true self, not like the, oh, ego, selfish, da, da, da. No, just take that out there is this being that is the true essence of you, that we call the self with a capital S. And then there are these parts that get developed. Um, and they've been there all along, but then they tend to take on these roles based on, how your childhood experience went. They say about 80% of them are developed in your childhood, another percentage in your adolescence, young adulthood. But, and then there's a percentage that is developed, let's say, by a traumatic event. So, but for the most part, they are developed in your childhood, and they are these managers and protectors that kind of help you cope when, we're children. We weren't able to really be autonomous for ourselves. We had to follow what our parent figures were saying when they told us we were being bad. Maybe this part of us was like, being bad threatens my safety, so I must be this way. And so these are all like kind of little parts that get developed. And then it helped us in that moment for sure. But as we go through our lives, they still respond to the same triggers, but we're adults now and we don't necessarily benefit from that coping mechanism anymore. So when it comes to control and this feeling of like, what is control? What are these parts doing? They're trying to keep things, well, they're just trying to keep you safe. And they're trying to keep you secure. And they learned how to do so from the mentality of a child. So a lot of times these parts, they just need to be kind of approached like you would your child or a loved one, you know. But we tend to not approach them that way. We tend to approach them like, "Ah, no, ugh, I don't want to feel this way." Or, ugh, it's so bad to be controlling. Or, ugh, we kind of take on these attitudes towards these parts. And so, what I want to do with this hour is to change our attitude to these parts, okay? So, let's just get up for a moment and we're just going to move our bodies because this is what we do when we begin this work, okay? Because we got to get out of here and we got to get in here. Okay? So let the feelings take control and just, no freaking way of moving, just move. Move the body and watch what happens up here as the body. Let the feelings take control. Let the feelings take control. Let it take control. How much is the feelings take control? Ooh, that's the mind comes in. Bring it back into the body. Mama told me to be loved. I find my mind will take over and go, oh, how are you moving right now? Mama told me to be Fire, fire. You wild with it. Okay. And bring it down a little bit now.
Let the feelings take control. Let the, let the, let the feelings take control. Let
Keep
the,
moving a little bit longer.
let the,
Keep bringing yourself
let
back
the
to your body.
feelings take control. Let the, let the, let the
Let it build up one more
feelings take
time.
control. Let the, let the, let the
Out of your head,
feelings
into
take
your body,
control.
into your legs, into your feet, into your hips. These
Let the
last few moments,
feelings take control.
bring it into your arms.
Let the
Move
feelings
everything.
take control.
Move everything.
Let the feelings
All
take
right.
control.
And bring it back to your seat. And for me, I'm going to grab some water. And we're just going to do a little practice. Hmm. Going to do a little bit of grounding, just a little bit into the self. Hmm. And first, let's just bring our attention to our breath. Feel your breath rise and fall in your belly. For me, I can feel my heart pumping. I haven't really done any hard exercise in the last few days, so kind of woke up my body in those few minutes. So yeah, bring it back into the body. Feel the rise and fall of the breath. Feel how your heart is pumping blood through your body. Through your chest. And bring attention to this part of you that is observing all of this. That is the self with a capital S. And feel, what is it like, this conscious awareness in the self. The self is calm. The self is clear. And the self is courageous and confident. And as you say these things to yourself, I am confident. Maybe there's a part that comes up and says, I'm not confident. And so, as the self, we are going to observe this part and see it not as the true self, but as something that was learned and trained. It took on this role for a reason. And maybe there's another part that comes up. And what does it say? And so, just at this moment, we're going to take this time, just another minute or so. Just be the self. Feel what it feels like to observe these parts that have something to say. Just take some more time to feel your body breathing. Feel your body pumping blood. And when you're ready, open your eyes and just kind of rubbing my hands to bring myself back into here and now. And I mean, I have some notes that I took for today. When we tap in a circle, then we're able to bring up the things that kind of trigger us when we talk about control or feeling a lack of control. And so I'll just go into my experience then. This feeling of out of control when this part of me wants to come up, which it's been up for the last few days. And I know there's a lot going on the planet right now, in the US, other parts of the world. And I know it's affecting people that I love dearly. And we're all going to have our own personal experiences. But these things do bring up this feeling of, I don't have any control. And as we say that, I think let's just tap on that real quick. Even though there's a part of me that feels, I'd say, helpless when I say I have no control. I choose to be present with this feeling right now and with this part of me. So as I'm talking and tapping, go ahead and just follow along, tapping on the same points and saying the same things, okay? Or modifying it to how you feel. Maybe helpless isn't the right word for you. And even though there are feelings of fear that come up when I think about having no control over the situation, I choose to honor this feeling and this part of me, even though I'm feeling, I guess it's kind of a fear of the unknown. Because if I were to know it and it was okay, then I wouldn't feel the need to control it. But there's this part of me that fears it because I don't know it. I don't know what the outcome will be. And there's a part of me that doesn't like the feeling of the unknown. So even though there's this fear of the unknown, this feeling that I cannot control, I deeply and completely love, honor, and accept this feeling and this part of me and anyone else who may contribute to these feelings. There's a part of me that fears the unknown. The unknown is scary. It can be. And when I'm thinking about this part of me that fears the unknown, maybe this part of me was developed as a child. In my childhood, I had far less knowledge of what was possible. And so, really, everything was unknown. And somewhere along the line, I learned that the unknown is scary. And for sure, for a child, things are much scarier. You don't have so much ability to handle yourself as a child. And at that age, we don't yet have the sense of experience that we do as adults. And so I can imagine that this part of me that's afraid of the unknown is like a child. And I love this child just as she is, or he. Just bring in some understanding to the part of me that's afraid of the unknown. Take a deep breath, come to your heart, close your eyes, and just try to picture this part of you, maybe. Maybe it is your inner child. And as you now, what would you give to that child? Just some reassurance. What would you say? Now I'm just kind of going with the flow of how things want to go since I'm doing this tapping kind of on my own. And just trying to also tap into kind of this general energetic feeling. So let me know, please, in the comments if this is resonating for you. And let's just move on. So now that we've tapped into kind of the source of why we control, now let's move our attention to this part that kind of takes on this managing role. And let me just take 1 second. Sorry. Just want to check in one thing before I continue. Okay. And so when I kind of think about this child being afraid of the unknown, then there's this role that comes in, this part that comes in, and maybe this part is kind of like a parent, and it's just trying to keep that child safe, you know. And so we tend to have kind of a funny thing with kids. We want them to grow up happy, healthy, balanced, but their big emotions sometimes, their big fears sometimes trigger in us, parents, this kind of need to change the uncomfortable feeling, you know? So instead of trying to change this uncomfortable feeling, let's tap into this parent real quick that needs to manage how this child feels. And maybe this parent was taught that it is unsafe to express difficult emotions, uncomfortable feelings. And this can come out in very controlling ways. I think in my experience, I had um, a parent that was very uncomfortable with my emotions. And then also other caretakers that, used the phrase, you want to cry? I'll give you something to cry about. And this caretaker has since come to me and told me that was not right. But that was how, that's how she was trained to deal with emotions. And, and yeah, so there's this level of control, kind of going on. And how do we control? We usually control with kind of criticism or threats, kind of in those two categories. But how do we also control? Like if things are just so like this, you have people who are OCD, that things have to be in the right place. I have a tiny bit of this, maybe a little bit bigger than a tiny bit. And it's been more pronounced, especially after my experience of losing my house. All of a sudden, the things that I now have, like there's a part of me, not my full self. My full self is able to let go, but there is a part of me that's like, "Oh, I could lose that if I don't keep, this order going in my life." Mhm. And I guess what are some other ways that you would see this control? And as I was tapping into, I mean, these parts that want to manage, yes, they're managing this self. So let's just go into this part now. Let's tap with this part right now, okay? Let me just see. And so I'm just going to bring in to our awareness, kind of visualize this part of you that gets really upset when something is out of order or out of control. And so there is this feeling of like upset. Maybe there's some frustration in there. Maybe there's a sense of urgency. That word came up. Mm. And so, and kind of feeling like how it feels in the body. For me, it kind of brings in this tightness in my chest, but what does it bring in for you? Some people, it's like a tightness in the shoulders, in the jaw, maybe a holding in the legs. And so following along, even though this part of me, I'm just going to say, feels really uncomfortable when things are out of control. I choose to give some attention to this part of me now, even though this part of me kind of has the energy of a strict parent. Bossy comes to mind. I've been accused of that. I choose to really spend this time and send it love. I'm going to honor it with my attention. And even though there's this part of me that feels intense when it feels out of control or when things are out of control, it's tight in my chest and in my throat. I feel constriction in my breathing. And I'm really spending this time right now fully aware that I'm bringing this up. You know, we are bringing this up right now as the true self, allowing this part to express how it feels. I am allowing this part of me to express how it feels. And just take another moment here to just really feel it. Now I feel it in my lower belly. And I deeply and completely love, honor, and accept this part of me and myself exactly as I am. Come up to the eyebrow. This part of me, side of the eye. This part of me can feel intense. Under the eye, when things don't feel like they're in her control. And this part of me, mm, I feel it in my chest. I feel it in my throat. And I feel this tightness in my lower belly. Mm. And I'm giving this part of me my full attention. I'm allowing it to indicate to me everything it needs to indicate through thoughts and sensations. And I'm not pushing it away. I'm bringing it closer. This part of me that's just trying to keep me safe. This part of me that maybe feels misunderstood. So I'm taking this time to understand it. And with my understanding, there's a lot of love in there. And I'm feeling some emotions coming up. And they're not bad emotions. I feel it like I want to cry. It's more, this part of me is grateful now. It says, thank you for paying attention to me. And so I'll ask you, do a few points and just say out loud to yourself, to this part of you, or what this part of you wants to say to you. Under the nose, on the chin, on the collarbones. Really try and connect with this part. For me, I just keep hearing, thank you for listening. Thank you for your attention. And let's come back to the heart. Close your eyes and take a deep breath, okay? So for me, I feel a real relaxing in all of these. And during that process with this protective part, for me, another protective part was coming in. And this is very normal. And it was a part that was trained by people who were uncomfortable with this part of me that feels the need to control. And during this process, I found myself needing to go, okay, I see you, I hear you. I can't quite describe it except that it's kind of a judgmental part, towards this controlling part of me, calling it bad, you know. And, this part is also coming from a place of we got to behave right. Otherwise, they will reject us, you know. And so let's just take a moment here and kind of first, let's tune into maybe any other parts that kind of are present right now. And maybe it's the same thing for you. Maybe you have this part of you that judges you for being controlling or and I think I'll just do a quick round. Hmm. Even though I have these parts in me that judge these other parts of me, I choose to love and accept them anyways. Even though I have these parts of me that judge these other parts of me, I choose to love and honor them anyways, and myself, even though there are these parts of me that judge these other parts of me. And it's all just trying to protect me. They go, oh no, people don't like it when you're this way. You shouldn't be this way. You're bad for being this way. But these are just learned ways of responding. Somewhere along the line, I picked this training up. And as I feel myself in myself and able to observe these different parts of me and how they interact with each other, they all interact with the self and respond to the self. And the more trust they have in the self, in me, the more they can relax and surrender the control. Hmm. Inside of me sometimes feels pretty complex. Inside of me, there are parts reacting to other parts. And these are all trained responses, ways that I learned to be in order to survive on this in this experience. And this part of me that criticizes these other parts of me. It learned that it's unsafe somewhere along the line. It learned it's unsafe to be me. But really, it was just reaction. It's really just responding to other people's reactions to me. learned in my childhood, and maybe by people that were around me that didn't know any better. Maybe people that were in my life that didn't know how to handle children's emotions. And so I'm bringing some understanding and some attention to this part of me. I'm bringing some love, acceptance, and knowing to this part of me. And as I do so, this part of me feels heard. Doesn't feel like it needs to scream its case anymore. And maybe it feels a little more trust inside of me, a little more trust with the self. And it's surrendering a little bit more. Take a deep breath, close your eyes, and bring your hands to your heart again. And so just taking this moment now to be in the self. This is your true self. And then we have all these little parts. And there are lots of different ways to view these parts. Just recently, I heard, the creator of this IFS, Dr. Dick Schwartz, Richard Schwartz. He said something that was extremely valid, at least from my experience recently. Going through all of this kind of the spiritual world and whatnot, and kind of going into these inner practices. And we tend to talk about the ego. And usually it's not talked about in a good way. And he brought up this point, and I'll just share it with you. The ego in the spiritual community is demonized, but ego is actually these protective parts just trying to keep you safe. And there's one thing that I've learned recently, that you don't ever get rid of these parts. You don't ever get rid of the ego. And you especially cannot transform them by talking badly about them. And there's this, kill your ego mentality. And I don't know, there's this whole movement of nothing negative, you know. And yet, by saying and denying these parts or the feelings of these parts and calling them negative, I don't know, it actually kind of charges them up a little more, creates this resistance. It's kind of like a child, you know. The more you ignore the child, it just gets louder it just gets more disruptive. And so, kind of taking this moment then to acknowledge that you spent this time right now, spending time with these different parts. And I don't know about for you, but for me, I feel like this sense of oof, tranquility. It's just the word coming to mind. And so I'd like to just end it, rubbing our hands together. Now bring your hands to your cheeks and imagine your inner child, or even just these parts of you. Just imagine that you're holding them and say, I know, I know, I know. Mm. Rubbing the hands again. Actually, I think that was, I see you anyway. Oh no, it's okay. All right. But now we're going to bring our hands to our heart and just kind of imagine also you're the self talking to all your parts and say, I love you 3 times. I love you and really feel it. I love you. And rubbing the hands one more time. Keep them in prayer position. And just thank you. You know, thank yourself for showing up. Thank you to all your parts for showing up, dropping their resistance. Thank you. Surrendering to this practice. Thank you. Thank you for showing up. All right. And I'll see you next time.